Welcome, everyone, to the Federation podcast, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm going to be your captain. My name is Kevin, and this week we are discussing Star Trek Q episodes. We're doing it live every Monday night, and this is Union Federation episode 230, Star Trek Q episodes, and we're discussing Q Who from 1989's Star Trek Next Generation. And of course, this is the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. And if you're watching the video here, show support, go ahead and hit the QR code there. It'll take you to our awesome website with all of our other really cool shows on the network. So make sure you check that out. But let's go ahead and introduce our crew for this Union Federation here. With us, as always, is the Oracle and Science Officer, and I think she might be a little Borgified. We'll check that out. But please welcome Miss Haley Stoddard. What's going on?
Freedom is irrelevant. Self-determination is irrelevant. You must comply.
I must comply.
You must. I've been Borged. So yeah.
Those are the cutest little bobbleheads I've ever seen of Borg cubes. That is really cute. That's
I
really
know.
smart,
This one I'm gonna put when I get a new car. I'm gonna put it on my dash and like
Love
super
that.
glue it. This one isn't a bobblehead, but it does talk and light up.
That's so cool. That is great.
Right.
What a great design for a ship. All right.
I know.
All right. What do you say we bring in the other assimilated friends here of the show? With us,
Yes.
of course, as always, is our first officer and counselor, also founder of the BQN. Please welcome Miss Amy Nelson. What's going on?
Well, hello. Borg Queen. Yep. BQN.
Awesome. Well, we still have, by the way, Kyle couldn't make it this time because he's been assimilated by the planet Taxia. So he's
Yes.
been busy doing work. He'd be staying up late, but he gives us his best. So Kyle will get you next time. Let's go ahead and bring in Mr. Retro himself. Mr. Gary, what's going on, buddy?
Hello, everybody. My resistance to this was futile, so I figured I'd show up.
I see what you did there. Okay. Well, someone that assimilated me into the podcast world, and I will always be forever grateful. At least welcome my buddy Robert. How are you, buddy?
I just love all the puns. I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here.
Get used to it, buddy.
Oh, I love it. Bring on the puns.
If you guys are watching, please, first of all, check out our YouTube channel, of course, as you are, and make sure you leave a chat, leave a message in the chat. Let us know what you think along with the show, and we'll put it up there and create some discussion here. But did want to let you know what we've been discussing lately on the Fandom Podcast Network, more specifically the Union Federation. Of course, last year we did a wonderful limited series on all the Star Trek two-part episode, which of course included the one with the famous Borg. We also did USS Orville crew profiles. We discussed all the main cast members, including all the guest stars and reoccurring Star Trek alumni behind the camera and in front of the camera. We also discussed Star Trek Section 31 special. We did the final season of Star Trek Lower Decks, and we also discussed season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds recently. But right now, we are discussing Star Trek, the Q Fan Collective. We've got a bunch of episodes coming up. This is a 12-episode limited series. And I want to give a shout-out to my good friend, Joe Caroni. He has this wonderful Q art here. And if you guys look in the back behind me over here, I'll show you. Got it hanging up right there. Check out his art at joecaroni.com. He's got a wonderful group of other art up there. He's also a big Star Wars fan, so make sure you guys check that out. But we are discussing the Q Fan Collective here. And of course, this has been inspired by this DVD collection right here that I have. All the episodes that we're going to be discussing are on here. And these are from the episodes through Star Trek Next Generation, the one from Deep Space Nine, and of course, the 3 episodes from Voyager. So, and if you also want a little history of the Q, go back and check out our first episode where we discussed Encounter at Farpoint from 1987, because we had a little fun with the history of Q, and we also called the Q Hotline. So make sure you go back and check that out. See what we got here. Anyone in the comments? Joel says hi. Hello, everyone. Joel, thank you for joining us. Appreciate that as always. And let us know if you guys have any other questions or comments. We'll go ahead and highlight them here as well. So, but let's go ahead and get into the first away mission. So, of course, this is a Q episode from Star Trek The Next Generation. This is Season 2, Q Who, episode 230 of our Union Federation here, and this is the Admiral's Log episode synopsis for Q-Who. And Amy, you're usually our reader of these. Would you like to go ahead and hit us with that and any information on when it was first aired, and I think an IMDb rating too?
Yes. Well, this was first aired May 6th, 1989. It is episode 16 of season 2. And it has a fabulous rating of 8.9 for IMDb, which is a very good rating if you know. So Q pays the Enterprise another visit, much to Captain Picard's disapproval. He wants Q to keep his part of their earlier bargain and stay away. Q insists that Picard needs him on his side. And to prove his point, he hurls the Enterprise far into the galaxy. There, the Enterprise crew meet the Borg and their strange cube-like spacecraft. The Borg are a race that is part biological and part machine that exists within a collective consciousness. They are also a formidable foe that can outpower, outrun, and outfight the Enterprise. With their shields weakened, it is left to Picard to decide if they really do need Q's help.
Well done. I did have a question real quick. When that famous scene where you see the Borg cutting beam going into the Enterprise hull, I think I have a picture of it here. I just want to bring that up. That was such an impact for me because we find out that 18 people died during this scene. And I was trying to look back at all the other Star Trek episodes if this was as impactful of like, whoa, this isn't just, happy exploration. People literally lost their lives during this scene. Was anybody else like shocked by this when this first happened?
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's being dissected. This is, and no way to stop it. It was,
The assumption
we are
is they're
at their
being
mercy.
assimilated,
Yeah.
right? The assumption is all 18 of those crew members are Borg now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Well,
I think so.
when I
Yeah.
actually saw that scene again, I don't want to be morbid, but especially on Blu-ray, I was thinking, were they actually going to like affect in like little bodies like floating in space? But I guess the perspective was so much that perspective-wise they would have been too small. But no, Robert, I actually think no, they're like dead and floating in space.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
It brought up a question in my mind. You all will probably know the answer. This is the first time in a Q encounter where Q's meddling actually causes casualties.
yeah.
Because every time before,
Yes.
he reversed it, right?
Mhm.
Or
Or it
Is
was a
that wrong?
fake
Or-
world.
Or Riker did. Yeah.
yeah, I think he undid whatever death was caused. But this time he just said,
Yeah, he's
you
basically
can't-
you're
you can't take
not.
a bloody nose.
Yeah.
We'll get
I
into
was
that
like,
later.
Phew.
So we're going to go ahead and get into some Star Trek trivia. All right. Okay, let's get with the first one here. Amy, you want to go ahead and hit the first one for us?
Yes. So the Borg were originally conceived as being a race of insects, as featured in previous season's Conspiracy, which I did not know that. Budget restrictions meant that the decision was made to go with cyborgs instead. Nevertheless, Q-Who still went $50,000 over budget. Insectoid races would appear as enemies in the subsequent series in Star Trek Voyager and, of course, Star Trek Enterprise.
Was it $50,000? Was that towards Riker's beard? I was trying to figure that out. Maybe. Don't know. Amy, go ahead or Haley, go ahead and hit us with a second bit of trivia here.
Sure thing. This is the episode in which the Borg make their debut. They would eventually go on to become the series' ultimate nemesis, an honor originally meant for the Ferengi but never materialized since fans took them as too comical for this role. Later on, the Cardassians became the big bad. So good. A threat more advanced than the Major Three, and then when trying to control the wormhole, the Dominion came in. More advanced than the Major Three, but beatable. The Borg had to be used sparingly to avoid any unbelievability about them as a superpower. Originally, they were not intended to have a queen. duh, and the two-part episode in which they appear later, The Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2, reflects this. The Borg Queen was created because the writers were having difficulty in writing dialogue for what was intended to be the Borg's central computer. The Borg Queen first appears in Star Trek First Contact, and queens would make several appearances through the later seasons of Star Trek Voyager. So dumb.
Remember when we were introduced to the Ferengi first, and they were supposed to be really bad, but people were like, they're not scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
It might be the ears.
Yeah.
The
All
teeth.
right.
Yeah.
Amy, I'm going to have you read the third bit of trivia here. I'm going to read the second part, but I want you to read the first part about our character here that gets introduced into this episode.
Okay, so Lisha Naff is an actress who is best known to Star Trek fans for her guest roles in the iconic episode Star Trek Next Generation. She played Ensign Sonia Gomez in 2 episodes of the second season, Q Who and Samaritan Snare.
Go ahead and read the next one.
Okay. It has been theorized by fans of the series that the character of the nervous and chatty Ensign Sonia Gomez was an attempt to add another regular, or at least recurring character to the cast, possibly as a counterpart for Geordi to riff off of in engineering, or even as a possible love interest. However, she only appears in Samaritan Snare after this appearance.
We're going to have this discussion on this character in one of the mission reports, but go ahead and read that last paragraph, and then I'll get the final one after that.
Okay. Her character was supposed to be a romantic interest for Geordi LaForge and had been well established for 2 consecutive episodes, but then was dropped from the series and abruptly never seen or referred to again until her appearance in the animated series Lower Decks 3 decades later.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this one, a lot of people may not know, but may do know. Beyond Star Trek, is it Lycia? How do you say her name? Yeah. It's Lycia. So
I said
Maybe
Lisha.
Lisha?
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 Lycia? Okay.
Yeah.
Lisha Naff also had a recurring role in television series Fame as Midge. In 1989, Naff played the recurring role of Phoebe Dawson in 12 episodes of General Hospital. 1990, she was nominated for a Daytime Emmy in the category of Outstanding Performer in a Children's Special for her role in The Perfect Date. Now, here's where things get interesting. Naff also appeared in a handful of film roles, including Lethal Weapon, 1987, and as the 3-breasted mutant in Mars, Total Recall, 1990. She has since become a journalist and media coach.
Wow.
Did you crop that photo?
That actually came like that. So, if you know Total Recall from 1990, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was one of the more famous scenes. And and I have seen that cosplayed before. Just going to let you know that right now.
So was Gene Roddenberry, is that his influence on Total Recall?
I don't know. Total Recall came out in 1990. And when did this episode come out?
Gene Roddenberry wanted a 3-breasted woman in the original series in the 60s.
Then you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This episode was early '89, so
Yeah.
No, I think Gene Roddenberry influenced Total Recall.
She's
There you
done
go.
convention appearances. She's signed autographs. I'm just going to leave it at that. So there you go.
good for
There's
her.
demand for that character's autograph
Yes.
in Total
Yes, there
Recall. So awesome. That's so obscure.
Okay.
We're dancing so close to the edge here.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
All right. Here is this one. I went deep in on this one, guys. So here we go. Another possible inspiration for the Borg could be Ronnie James Dio's video for the song Dio, the Last in Line. If you're watching the video, that is one of the most iconic rock stars of all time. Ronnie James Dio, fantastic vocalist. His range was awesome. And he was quite popular in the 80s. And in a video, a young man enters an elevator only to find himself delivered to a dimension where humans are being tormented or frightened creatures that bear a striking physical similarity to the Borg. The Dio Last in Line music video did not directly inspire the Star Trek Borg. I'm going to challenge that in a second. Although some fans have noted superficial similarities between the video's Guards of Hell and the Borg's cybernetic look. The Last in Line music video was released in 1984, while the Borg first appeared in 1989. So I'm going to show a couple little slides here of the Dio album, The Last in Line. And there's some stills there of Borg-looking creatures from the video, and of course, one of the most famous Borgs, Hugh, if you're watching the video. Now, I did want to, I'll get to the Borg Queen here in a second, guys, but I'm going to play something for you here for just a few seconds, and you tell me. Well, there we go. Hold on. Here we go. All right, so I bring it to you guys. Did someone get inspired by the Dio Last in Line video, especially with that one character for looking at the still in the top left-hand line? There's some similarities there. I'm just saying, guys.
Yeah,
what do you think?
no,
Yeah.
facially, absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
I'm gonna go ahead and just look. Here's this. Here's the video here. Still, hold on. Let me bring that to the stage. Right there. That's what the kid sees right away coming out. I state Exhibit A. I say, yes, someone who is creating the Borg was a Dio Last in Line fan. So there you go.
I agree with Joel's comment.
I always thought as a kid that the Borg, because I saw that episode when I was 9, I always thought that they reminded me of the Captain EO. Do you remember Captain EO at Disney at Epcot? And then you had Angelica Houston as that kind of basically Borg queen, and they had that all reminded me of that. So
Joel says, or did the same people work on both? It's possible. And he also said Total Recall is based off a 10-page Philip K. Dick story. No mutants in that at all. So thank you for chiming in there. So also too, back to the Borg here though. I did want to mention. Yeah, so the Borg's design for Star Trek The Next Generation was primarily influenced by the biomechanical work of H.R. Geiger, more famously known, of course, inspiring the aliens, the xenomorphs. Geiger's most famous, of course, work was on the original film Alien. I would buy that, because if you look at the Geiger design there in the video, and then you look at the Borg Queen to the right, definitely some inspiration there. What say you guys? You think so?
Well, I mean, as I was rewatching this last night, in the nursery scene, the walls in the nursery scene, I thought that's so Geiger inspired. Definitely. Totally Geiger inspired.
Geiger also did a PC video game around the time called Dark Seed that had that kind of stuff in it. It was like you played as this guy and it was an alternate reality thing. And in the dark world, that stuff was in there. So,
well, it's interesting the term biomechanical comes up, guys, because when Erin and I were looking for wedding rings, she found this really cool Instagram jeweler out of like Poland who looked like a Viking, and he made these great designs. And his design for the ring that we settled on was biomechanical. And if you look here, right there. I don't know if it'll show that. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
That's perfect right there.
Yeah, that is an alien design, and he called it biomechanical because he couldn't call it alien. Wow. So that is our matching wedding rings right there. There you go.
Awesome.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the first away mission. Joel says Borg still seem more Cybermen than anything. What do you think, Gary?
Well, that's always been, the theory that the Borg was lifted from the Cybermen. I mean, yeah, there's some similarities, but I mean, in terms of the nature of the Borg, and what they want, I mean, the Cybermen basically wanted to turn you into them, whereas even at this point in the show, the Borg are primarily
This is a reference to Doctor Who, by the way. We need to let the people know that.
Sorry about that. At this point in the show, the Borg seem to be mostly about assimilating technology that they can use into their own. The whole idea of turning others into them was much later.
Yeah.
Mm.
All right, well, let's get into the first mission report here, guys. And I did allude to this earlier here. Your overall thoughts on returning to this episode of Q Hugh from 1989, The Next Generation. Are there any subplots that stand out for you? And one of them probably, of course, is Ensign Gomez, the introduction of this character. The trivia alluded to the fact that she may have been possibly planned to be more throughout the series, make more appearances, maybe even a relationship with Geordi, who knows. So give me your thoughts on Ensign Gomez's character being a possible regular on TNG, and if anything else stood out with you. Haley, I'm going to go to you first.
As far as Ensign Gomez, I like her nervousness, because that's something that, you know, we don't see very often when people come aboard the Enterprise, right? She's excited about her assignment, and, you know, she's just fresh from the academy. Who wouldn't be nervous? So I really like that aspect of her personality. And so it's kind of refreshing a little bit to see that. Who isn't nervous the first day on their job that they've really, really wanted, that kind of stuff. As far as her being a love interest for Geordi, and also Geordi didn't need somebody to bounce off of. I mean, he gets this great bond with Data, and he bounces with Data. And then also anytime, you know, Wesley's down in engineering, and so no, we don't. No, just no.
I know how much of a big fan you are of Geordi, so this is coming at a little personal angle, I think.
A little bit, but I love the relationships that he has with Data and with Wesley, you know, and we get to see those. And I think, you know, having someone to bounce off of, like, it's great, but at the same time, not necessary, in my opinion. As far as anything else with this episode goes, I really enjoy this episode. It's very interesting. I have thoughts, but I have to save it for later, because, by golly, you saved that topic for later. So
Yes.
I will hold my tongue.
All right, Robert, your thoughts. Ensign Gomez, did you want to see more of her?
Well, I have something brief to say about her. But I think it says everything. The actress that plays Gomez, she has the charisma of a recurring cast member, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think that, to speak to her talent, I think that she has that energy. So yes, she just, to me, if being her first appearance, she just fits right in to the energy of a main crew member. So
Gotcha. Okay.
The subplot that stood out to me was this exchange between Guinan and Q. And it was about, oh, that's your name, right? That's what you're going by now. When he said that line to her, because as a 9-year-old, that flew over my head. But when he said to her, you know, I think Picard called her Guinan, and Q says something like, oh, that's what you're going by these days. And I'm like, I want to know all that backstory.
Yeah.
Was she called Jill or something? I mean, I'm kind of curious.
Well, just there's serious history between these two. And what's this all about? Like, she can block him.
Yeah, the hand gestures. Yeah.
That was also from the music video.
Yeah, but I don't know, she was doing the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, and I assume that that's a thing. Like, she's able to block Q somehow.
Yeah. Okay.
I always took it as like some weird like battle, like she was gonna like Taekwondo or something. Like,
right.
Claws out.
This viewing, I took it as a functional defense. She has some kind of power that could prevent him from zapping her off the ship.
Interesting. I like that.
Anyway, that's my take. That's it.
Amy, what about you? What are your thoughts on Ensign Gomez, and what else stood at you for a subplot?
Yeah, I really like her. I think she's so memorable. Everyone, you say Sonia Gomez, everyone knows who you're talking about. The ensign who spilled hot chocolate on Picard. You're not supposed to be eating or drinking in engineering. Hello, what's wrong with you? But I love that idea of her becoming a recurring character, because have her and Barkley together with Jordy's little team, how wonderful. I want to see that now. Like that, because now he gets to have the interplay between all three of them. That would make engineering feel like a functioning, totally manned, because we'd have these recurring characters. So that is a shame. And she definitely is one to be remembered. And credit to her acting skills. Yeah.
Well said. Gary, what about you? Your thoughts on Ensign Gomez and anything else in the subplot stood out for you?
I like her. I mean, she's endearingly kind of clumsy. It seems like that they took the concept of somebody who maybe is socially awkward or physically clumsy, but who's also apparently engineering wise like a genius. It seems like they took that and transferred a lot of that over to Barkley. When he came on, because that kind of combination of the social awkwardness coupled with engineering genius, I think was probably too good of an idea to let go. So I'm glad they kind of took that and carried that concept forward. I kind of wish that they had kept her, because like I said, she brings a different energy to the scenes. I think if she would have been a romantic interest, I think it would have kept Geordi from all of his holodeck romances over the course of the series, which would have been a good thing. He could have actually interacted with an actual human woman, so that would have been good. But Gomez, I know she ended up as one of the regular characters on one of the novel series, this Starfleet Corps of Engineers, and the novels were always great for taking like one-off characters and expanding them into a whole run of books. So she does come back in the novels, and it's really unfortunate that she was in only 2 episodes. And one quick thing about the Robert, I agree, that was my other top subplot with the Guinan and Q thing, because I think that scene is really well written, because it hints that the writers know the whole backstory, but at that point they probably didn't. But it's written so cleverly that the hints alone kind of sends your imagination spinning out. I mean, somewhere I think there's like 10 extra minutes of this episode that was filmed where we got like a 10-minute Guinan Q battle in that scene with all the music from the original series, like da 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 da, and they're just like going all around the walls of the.
There's a brawl in 10 forward. Everyone's coming up
and they
the
just
line.
decided, well, no, we have to cut it for time.
That's awesome. I like that. For me, Ensign Gomez, I really liked her. I enjoy this episode, and she's one of the highlights for me. And she says something that is kind of something that a lot of people allude to later in the series, that being on the Enterprise was like one of the coolest things ever. And it was a privilege. It was an honor. And she really alludes to that, even though she's a chatty catty and, she's a little silly and, she talks, like a motor mouth, but it's one of those things I found actually kind of endearing about her. And it made me want to learn more about her. And I like the fact that Geordi wasn't nervous with her. He's like, slow down a little bit, we'll go to 10 forward. We'll look at the stars, we'll chat, blah, 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 and I feel like they almost kind of made a decision to not give Geordi a ladies' man tag, instead of lead that to Riker, because when you see him trying to deal with love life later on, he's fumbling everything, right? Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that they kind of got rid of her, and we didn't get a chance to get back to her. Amy, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I don't want to be nitpicky, but okay, her makeup, it seemed very whitewashed, which I don't want to say, but knowing that this is this code of honor, and there have been, as I have podcast through the years, many Latinos that are like, there's not hardly any in Star Trek. Yeah. And so here we have Ensign Gomez, and her makeup is so white. compared to her neck and her, I'm like, what is wrong with the makeup? Was not that bad. So why is this just so white? And I don't want to assume, but I'm just going to leave it there because I think it does need to be brought
Okay.
up.
You did, especially, you notice it really like on the Blu-ray edition. So yeah, that's a good call out there. So before we go into the next mission report, if you guys are watching, thank you, by the way. Please subscribe and share. We appreciate that. We're going to be here every Monday night discussing these Q episodes, and feel free to shoot a comment in the chat, and we'll highlight it and get your thoughts on here as well. So, but let's get into mission report number 2, and of course, this is your thoughts on the main Q storyline throughout the episode and its impact on the Star Trek timeline. And the impact on the Star Trek timeline for this episode was huge. Now, I do want to save the discussion on if Q did the Federation a favor. We're going to save that towards the end there. But specifically, Q introduces the Borg to Star Trek. I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts more specifically on when you first watched this and this new threat that were introduced. 18 people are killed on the Enterprise. I want to kind of get that response from you. Because I remember watching this episode for the first time going, oh my God, like these are not the Romulans. Definitely not the Ferengis. Definitely not Klingons. And Q mentions that in the episode, so yeah, let me get your thoughts on that. Robert, I want to start with you.
Okay, so I'll just I'll throw this in there. I think that they have, and this is just as a zombie movie fan, the Borg have a kind of zombie quality to them in that they just keep coming and coming, and there's a sense of dread. So, for me at least, this is the first time where I think I was. You're faced with a sort of a nemesis in Star Trek that is deadly on another level. It's a kind of a sense of doom, almost. And especially when you take into account the dialogue at the end of the episode between Guinan and Picard. I don't know if you want me to go there.
No, we'll save that for the end.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
because
okay.
They are unlike any other foe that has ever been faced.
I like the zombie.
So kind of like a Romero zombie movie. How the Horde, they just keep coming and coming. So like when the one drone gets downed, Picard tells Worf, do whatever you got to do. And he turns the phaser all the way up. Boom. Yeah. The Borg goes down. The next one shows up. Just takes right over, takes the stuff off the other drone, and then the two of them are zapped out. And you're like, those two weren't worried at all about what was going on. So
yeah, definitely. Good call.
Yeah.
Haley. What about you? Your thoughts of originally seeing the Borg and what we were in for?
Yeah, I remember definitely being creeped out. I think, it's the lighting, right? So on the Enterprise, everything's light. When they go over to the Borg ship, it's dark, but kind of light right in the middle. And it just goes on and on and on. And so the enormity of this was terrifying. And then you add in the green and you add in this mechanical concept of, these were humanoid races, and now they are, but they aren't. And I do remember being terrified about it. And to this day, it's still creepy to think about this concept of this species that just consumes. And it doesn't care what you are. It doesn't care about anything. It doesn't want to have dialogue with you. And, it just goes and it just goes and it goes. As Guinan says, they just continue to go. And I remember thinking about this when I was younger, just thinking like being really mad at Q and going like, maybe they would have gotten to the storyline at some point. And also to this point, this is another episode as to why people who say that the first 3 seasons of TNG are bad. Hello. Hello.
There you go.
Who
Yeah.
says
Seriously.
that?
Oh, there's people. There are people, and I
Yeah.
will argue that the
Best of
first
both
3
worlds
seasons,
is where they think Star Trek TNG begins. So yeah,
I will
Yeah.
argue that the first 3 seasons are really good. You just have to
Measure of
remember
a
that.
Man. Come on,
I know.
Yeah, I was
So
watching that
any-
today.
Yeah.
So, but we wouldn't have the Borg if they hadn't put it in season 2. And so I do wonder, like, sometimes would it have come a little bit later? Would we have still gotten them if they hadn't put him in season 2? And so, and now watching it today, I think, Q comes on and he's, well, gee, you're just still out here just messing with things, supposedly, right? And it makes me think, okay, you're going off of information from Trelane and encountering Kirk. And Picard and crew are completely different than Kirk and crew. And so we're not going to come out here and mess with a planet and just up and leave and be like, who cares? Like Kirk. So it makes me think of that he just keeps looking at us as Kirk and crew rather than we've advanced several hundred years. We're now friends with the Klingons. And so when he comes on and he takes Picard and he's just like, who knows where they are? We don't know where they are. They could just be in another bubble right next to the Enterprise, somewhere out really far. And when Picard doesn't want to play along, it just reminds me again of a petulant child who's mad that he's not getting his way. And so even though you've given him the toy that he wants, he just throws it and breaks it.
Yeah.
And that's what he does with the Enterprise. He's like, well, fine, you don't want to play? And he just flings them out there. And I just think it's so silly just because Picard rejected his offer. And I want to become part of the crew and still have my powers. And I want to play. And you guys are my playthings and you're not letting me play. So now I'm just going to do something that is going to terrify you.
Like he's really going to renounce his powers to
Exactly.
become part of the crew. So yeah,
Right.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Please. And so I'm going to do something that I think is just kind of fun. And in this, I just want to lash out kind of thing. And it just makes me think of some of my clients that I've worked with that were younger, and they would just do something and just lash out. And it's so like just a little kid who doesn't understand their emotions and doesn't know how to control their emotions. And then the repercussions come on and he doesn't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Good point. Gary, your thoughts on the main Q storyline, the Borg baby? What were your?
Well, okay. So if I'm gonna consider how I remember feeling the very first time I saw this episode, it did have a really different feeling. It felt like something had shifted with this, even though obviously at that point it was too early to know exactly how. But this is really kind of what I think the show needed is an antagonist who could not be, where diplomacy wouldn't work, where a simple couple phaser shots wouldn't work. This is the Borg in their purest form. They're unstoppable. They're unreasoning. They're relentless. They're like a juggernaut, coupled with the fact that they completely outpower the Enterprise. And I think the two scenes to me that even on a rewatch you go, whoa, and you realize, okay, this is really, really bad, is the scene where when the second Borg shows up in the engine room. Not so much that he shows up right away, but it's clear that he's already instantly adapted his personal shields to the firepower of what was used, like a minute before. And they've already adapted, those great little squares that show that, they're blocking the phaser shot.
Little shield squares.
Right. And I thought, okay, that took them a minute to already adapt to whatever whatever their phasers could do. That was like an oh crap moment. And the other big oh crap moment is when they hone in and see the cube actually regenerating. That is a huge like, oh crap moment. Let's get out of here type of thing. And that's when you realize, okay, this is something that they are not prepared for, that in their experience and even our experience as viewers, whether through the original series or the 2 seasons of this TNG so far, this is like nothing that we'd ever seen. And at the end, even Picard had to admit that he's beaten for now, but he has to admit, no, you're right. We cannot deal with this.
We need you.
Yeah. And that was all like totally like, new territory for the show and for us as viewers.
Yeah, that's a good point. By the way, everything that you were describing, the Borg can't reason with, whatever, is basically what the Terminators were in the Terminator franchise, and we get from Kyle Reese in the first Terminator film. And then, and then we see the evolution of the Terminators in Terminator 2 with the liquid form and everything. So that's interesting. I'm sure there was maybe some inspiration there. Amy, your thoughts here on the introduction of the Borg to Star Trek. Do you remember what you were feeling the first time you saw this?
I mean, Gary sort of just took all of what I'm like,
yes, it wasn't me.
Put me last.
Yeah.
Put me last then. I
So,
feel bad.
I mean, really, seriously, the adaptation, that was what was most impressive. And that's what we have to continually fight the Borg. That is their greatest advantage. And if we can just turn that into ourselves, how well are we at adapting to life's challenges? Because the Borg can adapt. You try and fire at them, bam, nope, try again. And how great would that be? It's Counselor Nelson in the house. Sorry.
Joel says in the chat, by the way, he says, I was 12 when this first aired, and I remember being very worried for our crew. You and me both, Joel. Yeah, I was 16, no, 17, I think. Yeah, when I saw this episode, I was going, how are they going to deal with this in the future? What is going on here? And they're scary. So yeah, definitely. All right, let's go ahead and get into the mission report number 3 here, guys. And this here is what is the best or most memorable Q moment? Is there a Q scene or character moment that best stands out for you in this episode? I'm going to start with you, Robert. Was there something that John de Lancie's Q stood out for you? A certain scene that he did, a moment he had with a certain character? What stood out for you the most?
Well, like I said before, of course, the exchange with Guinan. What really caught me was one of my favorite scenes in this episode actually has no dialogue, and it's just they track on Guinan moving. Her spidey sense goes off, and she moves from behind the bar to the window area of 10 forward, and they're just on her for the whole. So the dialogue is her expression on her face. So it's one of my favorite scenes.
And the creepy music that's playing during that scene. Yeah.
Yes.
What good call out. I'm going to bring that up later. That's
and so when you go from that to Q, Picard, Guinan on 10 forward, and when she comes out from behind, pops up from behind the bar, he immediately snaps his head over and is like, you need to get rid of her.
Yes.
And you're going, whoa, he doesn't like her. Like, he really doesn't like her. Why? So that my question brain just starts firing off. Like, why doesn't he like her? What's the history there? What happened? They've known each other for hundreds of years. She went by a different name. What in and apparently she can stand up to his power. So many questions. So that's what's sticks out for me.
Amy, I'm going to go to you so no one steals your thunder on this one.
Yes.
unless Robert already did. What's your favorite Q moment?
Yeah.
What did you
no,
just
but
do
I do
for the listeners. Wait, for the listeners, what did you just do?
Right. I did the Guinan finger hand gesture. Yeah. No, you know what? I do like his interaction with Picard in the shuttle. And, everyone's like, hey, where's Picard? He's not on. We're missing a shuttle. And so them in the shuttlecraft, I think that, again, their chemistry just shines through. And Picard's trying to figure out, how am I going to communicate with him that I don't want to deal with you, Q. And Q is just this pesky mosquito saying, deal with me, deal with me.
Yeah, good call. That is a good scene, yeah. Haley, let's go to you next. What's your most favorite Q moment in this episode?
I don't know necessarily if I had a favorite Q part in this episode. I do like that we see a progression with Worf. He doesn't come out phasers.
Wait, hold on. You mean microbrain?
I know. Well, and that's the thing. He, the first time we see him,
Q's
and
mean.
With Worf and his reaction to Q, and he tells Picard he's going to do better, and then we see him again. So we get Q again, and Worf immediately jumps out with the phaser, right? And so he hasn't gotten that, and then this time we get him, and he just kind of steps forward, and he kind of steps in front, and de Lancie, Q's still calling him microbrain, and he doesn't do anything. And even though Picard says Worf steps aside. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't react in the same way.
Hold on a sec. You brought up something that I thought I noticed for the really first time watching this again. That's in 10 forward, and this is where right before Q goes into why he wants to do what he wants to do, but Picard asked Worf to leave, and Worf goes out of it, and you see the doors close behind him.
Yeah. And so, he's learning, and I love that, individual character growth with Worf, of him just stepping aside and saying, okay, I'm going to go. And then I love this line, or part of the line, and Picard says to Q, but you're next of kin to chaos. And I think that just kind of sums it up, and it sums up this episode really well too, because he's just there to cause chaos, like a petulant child, because his godlike parent beings, whatever, didn't give him enough attention, and he's just like a kid with an ant farm, and he's like, these are the Enterprise is his ant farm, and what can I do, and how can I shake it up this time around? And so
Gotcha. Gary, what about you? What's your favorite Q moment?
Mine is actually, if you go back to the pictures you had up, because my favorite moment is one of those pictures, and it's the one at the bottom. Just the visual juxtaposition of Q just laying down on the railing, like reclining on the railing, as the Enterprise is basically about to be
life or death situation.
And the music is like dun 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 dun, and Q is there. It's like part of him, it's like he's kind of you probably think he's probably kind of curious to see how far Picard's going to push this before he runs to Q for help, and he's probably just curious on a like watching a movie to see how it's going to turn out. But it's just that juxtaposition of him being so casual as all around him see that everything they're trying is pointless. I just think that was great staging of that scene.
I'm glad you highlighted that picture, because I included that in the cover art of this podcast, because I feel when it comes to, if you were to show one picture of Q that might describe his personality, that one right there where he's just laying on the rail, on the right side of the bridge there, or left side if you're looking at the monitor. And he's just like, as you said, Haley, a pestilent child, he's just like, let's see you get out of this, and just like enjoying the ride, knowing nothing can happen to him, but the entire surroundings of what's going on is in horrible peril. So yeah, that's a good call out.
I have a question to pose based off your comment here, Kevin. What would Q do? What do you think he would do if the Enterprise had been destroyed? I mean, we know he didn't, because this was only in season 2, right? But what would he have done? What do you think he would have done if his favorite playthings, his favorite play ship, had been completely obliterated by the Borg, that he just threw them into an encounter with?
My first reaction to I'm going to answer first, is I feel like he would have saved them. But I think that he probably would have saved them and then taken everybody and transported them back to Earth or somewhere safe or somewhere where someone would have to fly for like 6 months to find them without the Enterprise. I feel like that's what he would have done.
If Picard were an arrogant man, he'd have played chicken with Q. Right?
Yeah.
See, Picard isn't that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I agree, Kevin.
Yeah.
Q was not to your question, Haley. I believe Q would have done the same thing Kevin said.
Gotcha.
Anybody
else want to chime in on that question that Haley proposed?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking as I was watching it that probably from the minute Picard indicated that he was going to give into Q, my idea is that at that point Q stopped time so that the Borg couldn't do anything else while Q and Picard could have their final kind of conversation about it all. Yeah, and I just think let's say that the Borg, the same thing if the Borg had sent some kind of like devastating firepower toward the ship, Q would have probably stopped time and turned to Picard and go, one last chance.
Yeah.
What's your answer?
Yeah. I feel too, because there's the line where Q says to, I think it's to Guinan, or while she's, while they're all talking, like the humans are getting too close, or they're getting too far
says that
in.
to Guinan.
Yeah. And that stood out for me more on this one because, it kind of alludes to earlier that the Q might be threatened of humans, basically, and humanoids in general, or the Federation. And so I feel like there's some underlying threat and theme to that as well. But I don't think he would have let him die. I think he would have made it hard for them to get home and get going again, maybe. So I don't know, because he enjoys their plaything, basically. So yeah. Okay, guys, we got into our final mission report. This is general discussion, but I got 2 topics I want to bring to it because they're pretty big here. And if you guys have another topic after we discuss this, feel free to bring it up. But the first part I want to discuss with you guys is your thoughts on the evolution of the Borg design and the Borg history here. Because, when it comes to this episode, this starts a huge thread of one of the most, big baddies in sci-fi in general. So, so their thoughts on the evolution of the Borg design from TNG through First Contact and Voyager. And I have a little picture over on the bottom right if you're watching the video. Species 8472 was introduced in Voyager because also, obviously, we're introduced to the Borg in that as well. 7 of 9 came in there and became a cast member, and we got the Borg Queen returning in that as well from First Contact. But they were species 8472 was the first species that really threatened the Borg. And I got pictures here, of course, of Picard becoming Locutus. And then, of course, we got one of the more famous Borgs here, Hugh, the one that they saved, and the ramifications of what happened with that character in the Borg. And then, of course, the Borg Queen in 7 of 9. I want to get your thoughts on that. Haley, I'm going to start with you.
I remember thinking they were always creepy, and it always terrified me. And so I appreciate what they did, as the technology got a little bit better. I am intrigued, and I guess it makes sense in my head. I can kind of wrap my head around it, but like, why there's no hair? Like, you would think that even though they're like dead, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I always wondered about that. Like, that was always one question I had of like, why do none of the Borg have hair? I think that was the only thing that I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think just the whole thing, they were always just really terrifying. I hate stuff when it comes to eyes. So anything like a needle getting close to an eye, even if you don't see it, I know it's happening. It grosses me out. So the whole, like, they all have, a lot of them have just one eye is like something. And then species are 8472. I thought that was brilliant, and I think it's great to eventually have something that even your scariest monster is terrified of something, right? Because they all have to, like, everything is terrified of something. And, even, the big spiders that we have on this planet are terrified of something. And so I really liked this concept that we got in Voyager.
Amy, let's go to you. You put a cool comment there in the chat for people to see. Voyager Endgame brings back the original Borg Queen, but it seems that they were interchangeable. Yeah, it was Annie Wershing. She played the Borg Queen. She also came back to do it as well in Picard. So give me your thoughts on the evolution of the Borg.
I love that they were definitely scary and we got them. And then Voyager, you hear fans say, oh, they took the teeth out of the Borg, but you have to eventually. I mean, look at Strange New Worlds and the Gorn. Like, we finally are getting some personality, some individualism with the Gorn. And we needed that with the Borg, because you can only be bad for so long. Because if you're constantly saying, oh, okay, they're the enemy, and you're not going to have any dialogue, then you're never going to be able to overcome this. And so they start out very creepy. And I love that they dropped the Borg baby. I thought that was very terrible. And I'm glad that it really never came up again. I think maybe there was something, but like, overall, it's just we assimilate. So I think that's even scarier than like having Borg children. So that was creepy, but I totally get why they did it, because this is the introduction. They were putting out feelers, what's going to stick, what doesn't. So yeah, the evolution, it needed to come to an end. And I don't know that we really got an end, but we got some individualism with Hugh and with Voyager and in Picard season 2, I felt.
Yeah. All right, Robert, your thoughts on the evolution of the Borg.
Okay. So respectfully, I like the things about the Borg in this episode, especially, that they are a totally unfeeling, totally this is about business and survival. This has nothing to do with morality for them. This has nothing to do with ethics. And I think this is their most interesting and their scariest state, is this episode. There's just a collective. I do think the babies are dumb, but the idea of a pure collective consciousness that is strictly focused on surviving and upgrading, surviving and upgrading, surviving and upgrading, relentless pursuit of that goal. And the idea that there is no such thing as dialogue with them, I find terrifying and interesting. So, but I can see the other point there, that eventually to keep things interesting, you want it to evolve. But I guess I as a fan of the Terminator and Alien franchises, this idea of a nemesis that is, like they describe the xenomorph in Alien as a pure organism that is free from any kind of moral scruples, and it just survives perfectly. That's what the Borg is to me. It's like a xenomorph,
right?
Or like a Terminator, a programmed machine. It's kind of a combo of the two, actually. So
it's a good call out there. I want to give a shout out to Joel in the chat. He says, I think by Picard series, it seemed that Q did everything for humanity, Picard's benefit. He was preparing the Federation for a future threat. We'll get into that in a second. And I also like the call out Joel said here too, as Borg babies were in Lower Decks. That's the animated series. In the training hollow simulation, Boimler rescued them all. I remember that. That was great. All right, Gary, let's get your thoughts on the evolution of the Borg.
I just want to say that I've actually been feeling really bad for like the last 10 minutes, but I feel better now because Amy took a lot of what I was going to say. So I'm actually
Again,
feeling
it wasn't
really,
me.
I'm feeling
Neither,
really
neither.
good. I'm feeling a lot better now.
All goes around.
So, yeah, you know what, the Borg, it's like, this was such a kind of a genius conception, but again, you do have to kind of evolve. I mean, I think the dilemma is that you've got to evolve who they are, because if every appearance would have been exactly what this episode was, we would have gone, yeah, okay, it's the Borg again. You know, and we would have got, you know, same old, same old. So you have to kind of slightly evolve it. But again, as somebody said, you have to do it without kind of defanging the Borg. And so it's a very, I mean, the next appearance, you know, they assimilate the captain, and then, you know, what happens. And then I think for me, the trickiest moment was the Hugh thing. And I'm still not sure how I feel about it, even after all these years, because I think that's when they skirted the closest to totally just undermining the whole concept of the Borg. If you can basically save somebody and reverse them, you know, do it to everybody, and you have a sympathetic Borg now. And I thought, okay, that's it, they're done.
Yep.
But they confined it just to Hugh and to the few other people in the Descent, the two-parter with Lore. And of course with Seven, you know, that was a unique situation. But again, and then to me, they came closest to undermining them again, actually, with Species 8472, which was a genius creation. But again, you don't want to make the Borg sympathetic, because now they're being overrun by another alien, you know? So you can't make the Borg sympathetic. You can't make the Borg, you can't undermine their threat, but at the same time, you can't have it be the same thing over and over. So I think the progression, Kevin, that you've lined up here is probably, you know, making the best of a sticky situation, in that you can't go too far, you know, one way or the other. And I think overall, I think they did a really good job over the years of it.
Gotcha. Well said. My only comments are, because you guys had covered all of the really good points on the evolution, but I just want to talk about real quick. I want to mention the evolution of the look of the Borg, because, you know, we go for these guys wearing these black tights underneath with a bunch of cool like hoses and armor, and then these cool headpieces, and all the Borg were different. And I love that they went with that. They had their own little gizmos with things swirling. And I liked how like the one Borg came and picked off 3 pieces from the dead Borg, and for whatever reason, maybe one was their playlist and their family connection, I don't know, but it was kind of interesting, you know. But when I look back at when we go to like the First Contact, or not First Contact, is it First Contact? Yeah, First Contact movie, the Borg start to become a little more organic looking, especially when we get to 7 of 9 as well. I got to say, though, I really like the older styles a little bit more. It just hits a certain nostalgia for me. And I remember going to those early Star Trek conventions in Pasadena, California, and seeing people dressed up as these Borgs. And it was great because you could kind of do anything you wanted as long as you stuck to a generic design. And I think they did something special with the Hugh version of the Borg. And he had that little yellow eye. I thought that was really cool, and that showcasing on the video here. But I still love the original design. There's just something kind of more, not necessarily human about it, but something that I felt like when you are Borgified, that was kind of a good way to start, instead of becoming kind of this organic plant looking Borg that we got later on, which looked really cool and it was very scary. But I like the fact that this is kind of like the beginning of the Borg. This is what happens to you like 15 minutes later, you know, after you go through the process, you know, and it's kind of scary. So I just wanted to mention that.
You know, Kevin, you bring up a really good point, that you're right. Every single Borg looked differently, which is very different when you're being assimilated, that there's still this individualism based off of which components you get added to your body,
or what little whirling gears are at the end of your hand stump or something like that, you know. And I remember the Borg action figures. There's more than one. that had different little parts you could pull off of it and stuff like that. And I thought that was a really nice touch on that. And I remember getting the Species 8472 figure as well. I thought that was a really, really cool toy. But I wanted to save the big question for last, guys, because this was this is the second part of our last mission report here. And this happens at the end of the episode. I'll go ahead and show a screenshot here. And this is where Picard says to Guinan, perhaps Q did the right thing for the wrong reason. Perhaps what we needed was a kick in our complacency. So I ask you guys the big question here. Did Q do the Enterprise crew and the Federation a favor introducing them to the Borg prematurely? So, who wants to go first? I saw Gary. Gary rose his hand first. Right,
just bring. I'll be quick. I will say yes, and I think he did it intentionally in order to prepare them and let them know. I think he had to play with them. He had to have his little fun and toy with them for a little bit. But I think that it was an intentional right thing he was doing.
Okay. All right. Amy, I'm going to go to you next.
Yes, because I'm going to counter that. It was not, no. Bringing the Borg, they are now sooner coming to us. We don't know when the Borg were going to find us in the Alpha Quadrant. We don't know. Maybe they would have never made it, but now they will. It is guaranteed. So he removed that ambiguity completely. Now, did we need a kick in our complacency? Sure. But that was not the right way to go about it, because we do not know that the Borg would have ever made it. Because look at Voyager. What species could take out the Borg? Oh yeah, that 8472. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Haley, what about you?
So I believe that he didn't necessarily do them a favor. I kind of agree with what Amy said, is that, yes, perhaps the Federation, perhaps our Enterprise crew were kind of, just going along and easy does it. And sometimes we need to have a fear to drive us towards growth. But like Amy said, we might have gotten the Borg later. I mean, obviously, this is something the writers were potentially already thinking about. So it would have maybe happened eventually, but it might not have. Mm-hmm. And, yes, you could say that we wouldn't get all these subsequent things. We wouldn't have, Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2 or Summer Ever. We wouldn't have, one of the greatest Star Trek films. So there's a lot of things, but those things might have still happened if it hadn't have been Q. It could have still been something that the Borg ran out of stuff to assimilate and technology and people and came on their own kind of thing. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Okay. All right. What about you, Robert? What do you think? Do you think Q did a favor of introducing them to the Borg prematurely?
No, and I also don't think he had any designs. So this scene you have up on deck here, Picard is having this dialogue here, but he's looking at this through his lens, which is the lens of an honorable man, a duty-bound man of honor and ethics, right? Q is not that. Q is a narcissist. I don't know enough about these two, but I'll throw them in because I'm probably right about one of them, a psycho or a sociopath. He's one of those two. and he's, so I think that someone in the group said earlier, was calling this out, I think it was Haley, how he was very much behaving in this childish way, and his mood turned when Picard would not really dug in his heels, and he got kind of kind of severe.
Mhm.
Yeah, dangerous and
off.
severe.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're taking a petulant child and giving them godlike power. So I think that he just flung them out. And this is why I also agree with Gary that he wouldn't have let them die. Picard is like a toy for Q, like a toy and a buddy. I don't know, he's like obsessed with him.
A frenemy.
Yeah. It's this weird obsession, almost like a romance, a twisted romance kind of thing.
Gary.
One thing really quick, because I'm alone in my opinion. Nobody's in my corner. So I have to one more little fact that I just realized. So before Best of Both Worlds, so the Federation had a year and a half to prepare for the Borg, and they still got slaughtered at Wolf 359. So what would have happened if the Borg had just shown up out of nowhere, where the Federation didn't have 10 minutes to prepare?
That's
what would have happened?
That's a very good point.
I haven't given my opinion on this. I think Q did do them a favor, whether it was inadvertently or not, because whether he meant to do it or he was just kind of like, putting hanging the Enterprise on a string and watching the Borg as be the cat, trying to play with them type of situation. I feel like in this situation, he did do a favor, because I think this scene is really important, that we get someone who had to admit to this opponent, this being that, yes, we need you. I need you. I need your help. But that's what Q wanted to hear. And as soon as he heard it, he snapped his fingers and brought him out of the situation. But it gave them the knowledge they needed to do. And I think this kind of might have shaped Picard's, take on things and the rest of the crew on how to deal with upcoming situations. And yes, it's all fun to be exploring new worlds, but that's why the Enterprise D is one of the most armored things that there is when it comes to weapons and technology. Yeah, they're going to go out there, but they're going to protect themselves as well. And I feel like, and maybe I'm with you on this, Gary, that there would have been a lot more devastation if they hadn't had some knowledge ahead of time. Maybe they didn't get as prepared as they should have been, but they were definitely there, knowing what they were dealing with. And I'm sure there were some people in denial about it. Maybe there's some people going, no, we can take these guys. Well, that was Wolf 359, as we know, was a devastating moment for a lot of people, and has been referred to. And of course, was one of the main things that shaped Benjamin Sisko as well, because he lost his wife on that one. So I think that he did do them a favor. So, yeah. All right.
I have to say,
Haley, yes. Yes.
It is interesting though. We can't, I don't love this line necessarily, because yes, the Enterprise crew, we're a year and a half ish, right, into seeing TNG and seeing this crew being the ones out exploring. But again, like you just said, Kevin, yes, it's the luxury liner of space, but it's also
armed to the teeth.
Yeah. So the crew kind of already know that, like, yes, we're going to go out and not everything is going to be sunshines and roses. Like, we know we're going to encounter people who are going to disagree with us, who are not going to like us. We already know this. And so, and there might be people that we can't come up against. I mean, every time we see them up against the Romulans, I mean, it's just stalemate after stalemate after stalemate. So we just avoid them at all costs. And so we already kind of know this. So we didn't really necessarily need Q to do what he did to already know that, like, hey, there are things out here that are not going to ever agree with us, that we're never going to come to some kind of terms with, where we can have a dialogue, where we can have communication. So we already know this. Why do we need to be reminded about it necessarily? And so it kind of is, that's why I'm kind of in the middle. Like, yes, it's great to be reminded of that, and fear drives us forward and has us grow and makes us have progress, but at the same time, you're already also aware that these things can happen. as it
Yeah.
is.
You know, it's interesting. You brought something up that I've always thought about, because the Enterprise D class is the Galaxy class has families on it. You know, it's like a full-on city of people. It has the biggest crew we've ever had on an Enterprise, and I'm wondering if part of the mission, like subline, paragraph, whatever, is like, yeah, we want to have people and we want to have families, we want to have a large crew, because in case somewhere they're out there exploring and they can't get back, they can find a place on an M-class planet and repopulize and just kind of have like, you know, if they're stuck, at least they're together type of situation. So I like how that's always kind of brought up, like there's families aboard here, which means these families are also in jeopardy. And obviously with this episode and that cutting core that the Borg used to take a sample out of, like, you know, the Enterprise hull, and 18 lives were lost, you know. Were there any children? You know, and what's interesting too is that there's that one line, and it really it hit me differently, being the age that I am now and having the stuff that happened to me now, where they're having the discussion with Guinan about the Borg, and you hear over the intercom that Worf says, I have the list of casualties. And what does Picard say? Not right now. We'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
It was heavy. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into one more mission report here. This is kind of a fun one here. This is our Star Trek MVP, or the Amy useless least MVP person here. Who stood out for you in the cast? And I got, of course, the Star Trek Season 2 cast photo up there. Riker's got the beard. Season 2, he's rocking the beard there. So there you go. Let's go ahead and start with you, Amy. Who stood out for you in this episode?
Yay! Okay, I'm going Ensign Sonia Gomez.
Nice.
Come on. Yes. She so memorable. I absolutely love her chemistry with Geordi, with Picard, her anxiousness, and she was also like struggling knowing that there were 18 lost. And it was Geordi who was like, we will deal with that later, because right now we got to do this. So I really love her in all of the things, because she's sort of us, like, oh my gosh, we just lost, like very relatable. So
well said. Good call. Haley, what about you? Who is your MVP of the episode, or least favorite person of the episode?
You know what? I'm going to shock everybody. I am going with Troy.
Really? Okay.
She has one line. She comes onto the bridge. She asks Riker, "Is everything okay?" And she immediately turns to a screen. They didn't know that Captain Picard was not on the ship. It kickstarts the entirety of everything.
She knew something was up.
Oh, very good.
Oh my
Very good.
gosh.
Before we even get Guinan walking around thinking like something's off and weird, because, you know, she's picking up on Q's energy, which is weird because we've already encountered him twice. But Troy picks up that something is off.
That's a good one. Well
And
said.
as an intuitive person, I do that a lot.
Robert, what about you? Who is your episode MVP?
Well, I'm going to go with Guinan. I'm going to say Guinan gives the crew a whole lot of great intel about the Q continuum. I mean, she reveals that there are Q that are not like this
more respectable.
Q.
Yeah, they're respectable. Yeah.
So there's disparity among them. There's not a unified front. That's interesting. Then just by action, it's revealed that it is possible to fight the Q. They're not so omnipotent because I know it's funny, but she squares off, right?
Hold on, real quick. Everyone do the Guinan thing. Okay, cool. I'll get a screenshot of that later.
Oh, man. And it's revealed, unless it's revealed earlier and I forget, it's revealed how old she is and how old this all is. So it's just a whole lot of information about that. So that's what I think.
Well said. All right, Gary, what about you? Who is your
all right,
MVP of the episode?
I'm actually gonna if I could, go outside the box on this, but I feel very strongly about it.
Okay.
My personal MVP of this episode is the writer, Maurice Hurley, because the dialogue in this episode, the dialogue in this episode is not only memorable, in some instances it verges on the poetic. You know, Q described as next of kin to chaos. Q talks about terrors to freeze your soul. One of my personal favorite lines where Q says, the hall is rented, the orchestra is engaged, now it's time to see if you could dance. I mean, just beyond brilliant. And then when Picard's getting really desperate, he goes, is this an illusion? And Q says, this is about as real as your so-called life gets. You know, and then as I think it was Robert mentioned before, if you can't take a little bloody nose, you should go home and crawl under your bed. Just boom, 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 boom. I was writing down all these lines as I was rewatching this last night. I go, this dialogue is next level. So that's why I think Maurice Hurley is my MVP for this episode.
That's a great call out here. I was trying to actually find a picture of him here because the dialogue is fantastic. So yeah, that's really well said. I'll see if I can find a picture here. But what I wanted to do first was I wanted to give my thoughts on the MVP. And I'm gonna kind of align with my buddy Robert here. It's Guinan, but for a little bit different reason. But in the same scene, and you brought it up, when we see Guinan in 10 forward serving the patron, and then the creepy music starts. And this is after we know that Q has abducted Picard, and she kind of starts walking away around the edge of the bar. And I like that the patron's like looking at her, knowing like something weird is with her, you know. And then she goes on later describing what the Borg are. And I love the scene where Picard asks Guinan to look at the screen to see what he sees. And she goes into her little quarters or whatever and brings it up. And then she starts telling about the Borg during the at the table, basically, the ready room. It is. And it reminded me of one of the most powerful scenes in one of my favorite movies of recent days. Anyone seen John Wick? First John Wick movie? Anyone? Okay. Let me kind of explain what I'm talking about here. Is John Wick is a famous assassin, and he had a chance to retire because he did this impossible task. And there is a New York mob boss that is feared by everyone. And he finds out from one of his underlings that deals with his underground car theft ring, played by John Leguizamo. He finds out that John Leguizamo punches his son. And he calls John Leguizamo, says, why did you punch my son? And I'm going to show a picture here of that scene. And there is the mob boss. He gets a phone call. He's talking to John Leguizamo, and John Leguizamo says, well, your son stole John Wick's car and killed his dog. And the mob boss says, oh, and then hangs up. That scene right there is one of the best introductions in movie history that tells you about someone and their legacy or their infamousy without actually showing what he can do. You learn about what he can do later in the movie. And that's the feeling I got when Guinan was talking about the Borg to our crew. We're like, oh, she knows firsthand what's going on with the Borg. And we get a lot of questions that come up about that. And I was getting those vibes. So if you've watched John Wick, you know what I'm talking about. One of the best moments or introductions to what John Wick can do before we actually see it happening in the movie, of how good assassin that he was and how good he was at killing people, and that he was allowed to walk away from the mob life because he did an impossible task. Or as the mob boss says, I saw him kill 3 people with a pencil. There you go. Amy's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've never seen John Wick
Amy.
either, Amy.
Love all
Really
four.
good.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah. So it basically, when someone tells you how bad someone is and is convincing, that's the point that I was making. And that's why my MVP is Guinan in that particular episode. All right, guys, well, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. All right, we are discussing Star Trek Q episodes from the Q Fan Collective. from episodes from 1987 to 2001. Let's go ahead and get your final thoughts and let us know how we can also get a hold of you. Gary, I'm going to start with you. So your final thoughts on this episode.
Okay. Well, my final thought is that obviously I think this is one of the all-time great Trek episodes, but bigger than that, I think for the franchise itself, I actually think that this may be the single most important episode of the entire franchise, since it impacts so much of not only of what follows, not only in this series, but beyond that. I mean, you have the best of both worlds cliffhanger, which skyrocketed the profile of the show.
Yeah.
The effects on Deep Space Nine, as you said before, Kevin, with the whole premise of Deep Space Nine comes out of the Borg. You have the movies, the most popular one, First Contact. You have the entire latter half of Voyager. I mean, how much would all of that have been different if it had existed at all without the creation of the Borg? I mean, the domino effect of this particular episode not existing, we could talk about for another hour. So that's why I would actually think that for me, I think this is the single most important episode of the Trek franchise. For me, for Discord, I'm on Discord as RetroDoc, Facebook as Gary Akers, my X account there, Gary A_retro. And you can also see me on Thursdays on the FPN Type 40, talking Doctor Who, and on Saturdays on FPN's Spacebook, talking everything else.
Nice. Wow. And then stalking another show, another Star Trek show on Sunday mornings, right? Yes.
Until I get banned. I'm waiting. I'm expecting a ban any episode now. So I'm expecting a big thing. You have been blocked all of a sudden on my screen during that show.
We'll hear about that in a moment, but let's go ahead and go to Robert. Robert, by the way, it's so great to have you joining us on these shows, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm flattered that you're having me on here. So
yeah, dude, I love nerding out with you. Always have been.
I missed that.
Give me your final thoughts on this episode.
Okay. I agree with Gary. This is an all-time classic. I mean, that might start to sound like broken record because this whole set is full of all-time classics. So goes without saying. This episode, I think that it does a couple of really important things. It grows the relationship with Picard and Q for the audience. But specifically, it's a reminder that while it's the whole Q Picard thing is funny, Q is dangerous.
Yeah,
he's dangerous. Remember, don't forget that. And then the introduction of the Borg. And my specific thought on that is this is my favorite portrayal of the Borg, minus the babies. I agree the baby thing is dumb, but my favorite portrayal of them, just because I'm partial to that kind of pure essence of what the Borg are. So I like that. I also like their very industrial, stripped down, more industrial look. I think as the Borg evolve, they if it's the right word, they start to look a little cute. They get a little cutesy, a little hallmarky. But that's
a word in my vernacular, by the way, just so you know. Hallmarky, I use.
Oh yeah, sure. Borgified is now in my vocabulary. Someone said Borgified. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
Awesome. Haley, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah. So again, I think this episode just reminds you that Q can do and will do whatever he wants. And, we all know little 8-year-old grown children like that in our lives. So I think, that's something that Robert said very, very exacting is you have to remember how dangerous he really can be if he doesn't get his way. And that harkens back to TOS and Trelane, which is just great, especially given the next episode that we're going to get. So, and then, I think with the Borg, it is interesting to kind of play with the idea that this might have been something that was on the writer's table, but might not have been. And would we have gotten it when we did? few episodes later, maybe we would have, and who knows, like Gary said, where it would have fallen and what would have led to the evolution of the Borg, and how different our series would have been if we hadn't had it when we did. I think we could have had it maybe just later in the season and in some other capacity, rather than throwing in Q to be this petulant child to remind us that, hey, I can do whatever I want whenever I want, and you have no say in the matter whatsoever.
Good point. Yeah. Now, Amy, before we get to you, I just want to tease, first of all, this is episode 230 of Union Federation, discussing Q, Star Trek Q episodes. And the next episode we're going to be discussing, as you alluded to, Haley, is Deja Q, where Q loses his powers and we are introduced to a new Q, Q2. So,
which, you think about, if the collective saw what he did in this episode, and somehow, obviously it's gotten back to the more rational, logical, Q that Guinan alludes to. It's understandable why they're like, yeah, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done.
Right. Well, Amy, of course, this is the Union Federation, and we both are found on FPN and the Borg Q. Well, the BQN. So
Yeah.
I'd be careful about saying certain things, if you know what I mean. But Amy, give me your final thoughts on this episode and let us know what's happening on the BQN.
Absolutely. So this episode, do you focus on the Borg? Do you focus on Q? So since we're talking Q, I do want to focus on Q and look at what we know up until now. And we are just a toy thing. Toys are for children. So Q is a child. And then, as we discussed, he's going to get reprimanded in the next episode. I love that, because Q needs to learn something too. Yes, we do. Our complacency, right? We're going to see the Borg. We got to get our crap together. But it's the fun thing about Q is that we are his toys. He flips the Enterprise. Woo! And then last episode, we're going to go to Planet of Hell with this crazy, stupid background. And, it's just fun and games for him. So not only are we learning about ourselves and about the characters, and do you want Q powers? But Q is progressing as well. And I think through this, he does really get an infinity love for Picard and for us, as we see in All Good Things. He wants us to be better. And so we're getting that relationship as we go along. So I don't want to forget that Q is progressing as well as we are. And I think that is shown here and then exemplified in the next episode that we'll talk about. So, very important episode, this Q-Who. Absolutely love it. So, if you would like to see more of me, you can tune in to the View Screen Sunday mornings, 9 a.m.
Is that the one that Gary is banned from, or were you trying to get
That is the one that Gary will be a guest on very soon. Just don't even. So stay tuned.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Awesome.
So you can catch Gary in the chat Sunday mornings.
You can.
So that's 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, 5 p.m. UK time, because Calvin is with us over in the UK. And we have a great time over there. We have our Trek Masters quiz show going on currently. And so please check us out, BQN Podcasts on Instagram and on Blue Sky.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I would go, but I have to work Sunday morning, so I would love to see your show.
Yeah,
sometime.
I know.
Yeah. Just a quick shout out to you, Gary. I did find a picture of Maurice Hurley there. And this is on was it Memory Alpha here, and there's a little biop on him there. We lost him, unfortunately, in 2015. He was born in 1939, producer and writer for Star Trek The Next Generation. Nice call out on the writer of this episode. Appreciate that. That was a good one there. So, yeah. This is one of the most important episodes of the early seasons of Star Trek, and definitely in TNG era as well. And yes, there's a lot of wonderful, great episodes in the first 3 seasons of Star Trek TNG. A shout out to you, Haley, for mentioning that. Of course, I'm glad that this episode got in before the writer's strike happened at the end of season 2, where we got Shades of Grey, but we did get some really, really good episodes talking about morality and very thought-provoking stuff. And then more importantly, though, not only did we get the Borg, but we got Riker's beard. I mean, come on, So.
That's right.
So much better.
Yes, so much better.
So much better.
You can find the Fandom Podcast Network, where, of course, the Union Federation is, of course, on Facebook. You can find us on Blue Sky, X, Instagram. My name is Kevin. You can find me at Spartan_Phoenix on all these socials, and head up TeePublic, Union Federation t-shirt there. Get a little kickback. There's all kinds of cool designs that you can get there. Want to thank everyone here. Gary, Robert, Amy, Haley, thank you guys very, very much. Appreciate that. This is episode 230 of Union Federation, discussing the episode Q Who of the Star Trek Q episodes. Again, we will see you next time. As we always like to say, live long and prosper. And we are without a doubt the weirdest ship in the fleet. Thank you guys for checking in, and we'll see you guys next week.